Something about the Silver Eagle premiums. I mean, I look at the US Mint BU mintages by the month sometimes. There was a stretch where they're making 3-4 million coins a month, and then they just hit a rut where they're making 850 or a million a month. Is that their ability to make these coins, or is it the demand, or what's going on there?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Previously on Silver Heist. To see more, please subscribe.
This is Silver Heist, and I am joined today by Patrick Yip. He is the Director of Business Development at APMEX. So thanks for joining the show today, Patrick.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on.
In terms of buying, what kind of advice do you have for people who are buying?
Yeah, so one of the things I did at the Rural Symposium conference is my goal was to educate people a little bit more about the precious metals industry. So I think the first question people ask is gold or silver. Obviously, they have different fundamentals, but just looking at our sales, and this is year-to-date sales up to about mid-year, which is basically $1 billion in retail customer sales. So a lot of data there. About 67% of the dollars are going into gold, and about 30% of the dollars are going into silver. Obviously, the remaining couple percentage is your platinum, palladium, and your copper and your non-metal. But the majority of the people are buying gold. I think there are several different reasons for that. I think gold is kind of known as the ultimate precious metal. You look at what central banks are doing. I think 2022 was their 13th consecutive year of buying. In addition, I think it was a 55-year high in the amount of gold that they bought. So, a lot of people buy gold too. Silver is also great too. If I look at the metal mix on silver, before the pandemic, we were averaging about, let's say, 20 to 25% of our sales dollars as silver. I think ever since that silver squeeze movement happened in 2021, I know you'll recall that, it's brought a lot more visibility to silver. At one point, our silver mix was north of 45%, and now it's hovering around 30%. So a lot more visibility to silver.
What kind of gold and silver do you like to buy?
I personally, on the gold side, I like gold Maple Leafs and gold Eagles are by far my most popular products and my favorite. On the silver side, I like silver Eagles and 100-ounce silver bars. On the gold side, basically, I would recommend if you are buying gold coins, you want to buy your Eagles, your Maples, your Buffaloes, and your Krugerrands. Those are by far the top. I'm looking at our sales, year-to-date sales. 48% of our 1-ounce gold coin sales were Eagles, 17% were gold Maple Leafs, 14% were gold Buffaloes, and 7% were gold Krugerrands. So make sure you're getting the top ones. Those are going to have more liquidity. One of the things I like to look at on silver too is the gold-silver ratio. And I use that to determine whether gold or silver is undervalued. And the thought there is if the ratio is high, silver could be undervalued. If the ratio is low, gold could be undervalued. That ratio has basically been trading between, let's say, 20 up to 100 and change in the past 100 years or so. Right now, I think it's about 80 and change. So that implies that silver is likely undervalued compared to gold.
Okay, great. So just from your observations or your knowledge, do people buy when the prices are going up or going down, and when should they buy?
Yeah, it happens all the time. Basically, volatility spurs buying. So right now, the market's been relatively quiet for the last couple of months. So I would say the summer months are typically slower, and we've been seeing demand soften. But if I look at Silver Eagle premiums, for example, you could tell spikes happen when there's basically rapid buying too. So normally, you had Silver Eagle premiums hovering around $5 or so historically. Obviously, the pandemic caused those premiums to spike up to $10. Premiums went down from there a little bit. And then when gold hit 2000, I think in mid 2020, people ran in, and basically it caused the Silver Eagle premiums to spike from probably about $6 up to $10. So people bought going up into 2000. Obviously, I don't know what silver was at that point off the top of my head, but obviously that was clearly a move up that you probably should not have bought because gold is below 2000 now. But so people buy at all kinds of points. I personally like to buy when the metals go down. And almost when there's fear in the streets. When no one wants to buy, that's when I'm saying I want to buy. When it's in the news and when gold's over 2000, I don't know. I'm less eager to buy.
Something about the Silver Eagle premiums. I mean, I look at the US Mint BU mintages by the month sometimes, and there was a stretch where they're making 3-4 million coins a month, and then they just hit a rut where they're making 850 or a million a month. Is that their ability to make these coins, or is it the demand, or what's going on there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's a lot of I guess, misinformation out there on this. So what happened with the U.S. Mint, let's say, and many other mints too. So you'll remember back in 2011 and 2012, silver hit $50. Obviously, the U.S. Mint was cranking out these coins. They basically met demand. I mean, the premiums went up a little bit, but not to the extent that they are today. And then what happened from 2013 to 2019 is you had a soft period. You remember, like, gold and silver probably didn't do much in that period. So like any manufacturing facility, what are you going to do? You have excess capacity at 2011 and 2012. You're now going to say, I'm going to right size this capacity. I'm going to, turn down some of the machines, let off some of the staffing to staff for 2013 to 2019 levels. It's just like I would too if I were a manufacturing facility. You're not going to have excess capacity just for it, right? But then what happened in 2020 onward is the demand more than doubled. And you could ask any retailer, they're going to say that. But if you look at many of these mints, the U.S. Mint and others included, they're going to say, well, they were staffed for 2013 to 2019 demand. So what did they do? So they produced everything they could based on their current, capabilities. And then they started allocating metal across. So like if you're the U.S. Mint, you're going to say, well, I got to make APMEX happy. I got to make my wholesalers happy. I got to make all my other authorized purchasers happy. I only produce X number of coins. All of them want more, but I'm going to allocate it across my dealer network and basically say, that's what you get. That's what I made. So with APMEX, we needed more coins. So we then approached the wholesalers. We approached the retail public to say, hey, sell us your coins. And obviously the retail, the dealers are going to say, well, your premiums are not $2.35, what you're buying at the U.S. Mint. They're now selling for $8 over. So they're going to say, well, I think it's about $9 today. So if you bought, they might say, hey, I'll sell it to you at $7 over, knowing that like there's $1 in it for us to make, but they're making the money. But at some point, it becomes a blended cost. We purchased some at the U.S. Mint, some from a wholesaler. At one point, even I think the premiums at Silver Eagles were as high as I think low 20s right after the SVB crisis earlier this year, and we were paying I think $10 or $11 over spot per coin. But it's all it's all supply and demand. It just depends on what we could get the coins at and what they cost us, and that drives premiums up.
And the same kind of holds for like fractional gold coins. Sometimes I think maybe those bigger demand than what's being made.
Yeah, and fractional is a good thing too, because if you were looking at any minting facility too, if you have the machining, it's basically the same amount of time it's going to take you to stamp a 1 ounce gold coin or a 1/10 ounce gold coin. So what are you going to do? You're probably going to shift all your demand to the 1 ounce gold coin. So what happens is the mintage for the fractionals goes completely away in many cases because everyone's purchasing the 1 ounce gold coin. So if you want those fractionals, they're just not available, and the premiums are going to be a lot higher.
So what are some of the bigger customers that APMEX has crossed paths with?
I mean, we've crossed paths with different people. I mean, some you have people who are gold heavy and they buy tens of millions in gold. You have other people who are the opposite way and they buy all silver and it's Silver Eagle. So it really depends. I mean, it really depends on your outlook of what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is the best investment? But I mean, we get both from the gold side and the silver side.
Any thoughts on either silver or gold for the rest of 2023?
Yeah, I think it might be soft for a little bit. My own personal thought too, and the reason for it too is if you look at the 1970s, there was a period when gold, let's say, ran up from $35.71 to $200 in about 74, and then there was a period when the rates were real interest rates were positive. And in this case, it's debatable if they're positive or not, depending on what inflation metric you want to use. But what I can say is rates are a lot higher today than they have been historically. So that's pulling demand away from gold and silver. Who knows if gold will see a decline like it did in 74 and 75, where it went from 100 or 200 down to 100. But I think what's going to happen eventually is, we're overdue for a recession. And I think if that time hits, then I think the Fed's going to respond similarly to in the past. They're going to lower interest rates. And if we see the 1970s repeat, gold could go from $100 like it did in 75 up to $800 in 1980. So not saying it will do that, but it may have some crazy bull run, assuming the Fed decides to lower interest rates.
You also buy coins from the public, people who want to sell the coins that they've acquired, they want to sell back. So can you walk us through some of the steps when someone wants to sell?
And that's a great question. I feel like a lot of people, and we were chatting before this too, a lot of people are in the accumulation phase of precious metals. So they have not really had that experience of selling back to a dealer. But let's say you wanted to sell coins back to us. You first